GothCast, episode 2. I'm Dr. Sanders.
This is Robbie Gore.
And today we're going to be talking about another prolific, amazing, astounding band. No, we're talking about Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah.
This time. Which is one of the, I would say, most influential bands in goth music. And
definitely one of the most talked about.
Definitely one of the essential goth bands, I would say. You know, you search like best goth bands ever, and it's always going to come up. We have, last podcast I talked about how a lot of artists vehemently deny being associated with goth in any way. This is an example of a band that
adamantly denies
very
being
much
goth.
denies being goth in any way.
They claim to be really just their singer.
Yeah, it's Andrew Eldritch.
Andrew Eldritch claims they are a continuation of 60s classic rock.
Yeah. I can't hear, but I mean, some ways I can. We'll get into that. But one thing I want to talk about before we actually talk about any of the albums, because we're gonna go through their first three, basically their 3 albums, and then their 2 compilation albums.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna briefly talk about the compilation albums, not in as much depth as we normally would. But the first thing I want to talk about is how the Sisters of Mercy sound has become almost the go-to cliche for
goth music.
Yeah.
Drum machines, lots of synth.
Yeah.
Deep,
and the
mellowing,
the
vocals.
First and last and
you basically have to sound like Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, it's like a vampiric Transylvanian type of voice. And, there's a lot of cliches with music, right? So with hard rock, you may get some, whenever you tell people you're into hard rock, you probably get something like Led Zeppelin sounding or AC/DC sound. That's usually what people think. They'll do like the kind of like rock and roll, or you do like oh, I'm in a heavy
rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll be like, oh, I'm into heavy metal, and so they'll do like like Slayer or something like that. Or just what they exactly like a Metallica or something like that. It's just something that they think that the whole music is. And the Sisters of Mercy, that sound is definitely what a lot of people will do.
Yeah.
I like that impression. And it's so funny because they really deny being goth band, but they're almost the quintessential goth band in some ways, especially with their first album.
No, I completely agree. And I think further that point, I would almost say that I think previously before listening to goth music when I was younger, I almost felt like I didn't really know what it was because I just associated it with the Sisters of Mercy kind of sound.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started to hear things more like pornography that I was like, oh, there's more to this than electronic drums and synth and
It's Bauhaus,
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. But that's a whole other thing. That'll be a whole other episode. But with First and Last and Always, let's just get right into it. It's the Sisters of Mercy's first album. There were a few singles and a few EPs released before this. And like I said, when they were all compiled onto a compilation, and we're going to talk about that after we talk about the first 3 albums.
Yeah. These EPs were all pretty much recorded between 1980 and 1983, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah. But they apparently formed in 1977 from what we could find out.
According to Wikipedia. There's some discrepancy on whether or not that is accurate.
Yeah.
All these EPs are released independently, and they start to gain some success, and eventually that's what spurs them to seek out a record label because they want to release a feature-length album.
Yeah. And so First and Last and Always, I have a lot of experience with this album, and I want to get my bias. I want to put it out there before we talk about, Floodland or anything else. I want to...
Donnie and I may disagree on this.
I want to be honest. That this is without a doubt, I'll tell you right up front, this is my favorite Sisters of Mercy's album. And the reason is I have not only do I think it's a really good album, it's a very unique sounding album, and I have a lot of nostalgia for this one because I'll tell the story because I think it's pretty interesting, just because I have a history with it. Is my favorite band of all time is Typo Negative. Now, everybody knows that, who knows me, is that I love Typo Negative. I love that dark, brooding sound, especially on their first albums, I'm Peter Steele, I just love that sound. And so back when there was GeoCities pages, there was a Typo Negative fan site or, fan page or whatever, because I would just type in on Ask Jeeves or something Typo Negative fan site or fan whatever.
Yeah.
And I would just try and find some, and this one was a Typo Negative one, and they reviewed all the albums. And one of the things that was on there was their cover of Black Sabbath. They did like a Typo Negative version of Black Sabbath. And the guy said in the review that they had channeled too much of the Sisters of Mercy, like it had sounded too doomy and too deep or something. And so I was like, oh, Sisters of Mercy. And so I was like, that's probably like a band that sounds like them, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I think within that same year, my mom had taken me to Amoeba Music. And I'd never really been outside of the desert or anything like that. And so...
Never left your house before.
Kind of, yeah. Well, it's like where I lived was such a bubble, you know, such a small town.
Exactly.
And so going to Amoeba Music was like, oh my God, you know, like what is this place that has all this music? And it had a tiny, I don't know if the section's bigger, but at the time it was a really small section for goth music. It was like a little black painted like cabinet with it where you go buy when you actually bought CDs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like sitting there, I was flipping through all of these CDs and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is that band. This is the Sisters of Mercy. I was like, this is what that Typo Negative thing was talking about. And I was like, okay, I put down the money. I was like, this is the one I want. And I was like, what is this band? You know, like this is before you could really look anything up on YouTube or anything like that. And so I never really knew what they looked like. I don't think whatever version of the album I bought didn't really have. It's just like black, you know, and didn't really have any pictures.
Bootleg or something.
Something like that. It did not have any pictures of the band, so I had no idea what they looked like. And I was just like, I said, like, imagine this. And
so you imagined something great.
Yeah, I'd imagine something, you know, I imagined kind of like Typo Negative. I had seen Typo Negative and stuff. And so then when, like, YouTube first came out, I looked up, like, Sisters of Mercy, like, right in, like, the first or second year that it was on there. And I could only find one video on them at the time. There's only one. It was right when YouTube came out. And it was the No Time to Cry performance.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the official video. It was just, like, some performance where they lip-synced it. I was like, that's what they look like? Like, I was like, that isn't really what I imagined. You know, it's like, it's similar, but, like, they look so scrawny and they don't have a drummer. Like, I didn't realize it was, like, a drum machine. It was really weird, but that's my story for how I got this album. That's why I have
Avalanche.
Dr. Avalanche, yeah. But that's why I have so much nostalgia for this album, because I've been listening to it for a long time, and I just remember that going and picking that one up, and that was definitely one of the first like goth albums I ever had.
Yeah.
So, at least that I bought.
So I feel like, you know, we should give a little bit of backstory on the album. At this point, you know,
sure, you handle it.
Essentially, the band really just consisted of Andrew Eldritch and Gary Marks, and they end up recruiting, you know, members, Wayne Hussey, and like essentially like they're just kind of like this crew of members have just kind of been strung together last minute so that an album can be made, because originally it's just Marks and
then they just have like revolving drummers or something like that.
Pretty much.
People, yeah.
And then Dr. Avalanche, as we all know, is the drum machine that notoriously is a different drum machine on every album. Yeah.
For every album, I think they have Dr. Avalanche credited as the drummer. I'm assuming at some point they had to have used a real drummer to do fills or something at some point.
Yeah.
But especially for First and Last Noise, you can just hear that it's just a drum machine.
Oh, definitely.
Like that was the most 80s sounding drum machine I think I've ever heard. So something like, I don't know, like Duran Duran or something. But
yeah, I get that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's totally that 80s reverb drum kit sound.
Yeah.
Like and this is where Donnie and I are going to disagree. I don't really like this album.
I can't believe that, man. It's hurt me. It's hurt me to hear that. I love this album.
And I won't say that it's a bad album.
You better not. Yeah.
It's not a bad album, and I do appreciate what is going on musically with the album. Mm-hmm. I appreciate its contribution to what goth music is, because if any of the 3 records that they release can be considered gothic, it's
or
definitely
even influential.
It's definitely this one. But I just had such a hard time, just anytime I'd listen to this record, buying into it just because the lyrics are so bad.
I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly. Like, I get that they're kind of simple.
They're so cliched, though.
I know. That's kind of what I like about it in a weird way, is that because he does have this vampiric voice and everything, that, you know, you can do the whole, and it's dark outside, you know, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I don't know. For me, like, you take any goth band, you take The Cure. Obviously, like, there's some cliche lines in there, but like Robert Smith, at least Robert Smith is a serious lyrical writer. Like, spends time writing his lyrics. House, very dark, broody lyrics.
And even if they have some tongue-in-cheek stuff, they still have pretty freaking good lyrics.
Yeah, very serious, very intricate, very detailed. But Sisters of Mercy, like, at least on this album,
not
like,
doing it for you.
The lyric content is just, I don't know. I feel like it was written by my 14-year-old goth brother.
Yeah.
That's I don't know. That's just how I feel about the lyrics, at least.
Okay.
As far as the music goes, I do think it's a good album. You know, with what they're working with, I mean, I'm astounded that they can get that good of a drum sound out of a drum machine, really.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that the reason the music on the album is so good and influential for gothic rock is because it's not written by who you would think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about how the fact that
Robert wants to discredit Andrew Eldritch for this album specifically.
Well, it's pretty widely recorded that Andrew Eldritch did not write any of the music for this album. Their guitar player and bass player wrote all the music, all the vocal lines.
Yeah.
Andrew Eldritch wrote the lyrics, at least, and maybe that's why I have such disdain.
Is that why? Maybe that's why. Yeah. But yeah, I get it that he wasn't the chief composer. You know, it's almost like, in some ways, you could even view it as kind of like an Ozzy Osbourne type of thing, where Black Sabbath wrote most of the stuff, but I don't even think Ozzy even wrote the lyrics.
Yeah.
Like, at least Andrew wrote the lyrics.
But I'm still not entirely sure what it is that I don't like about this album, because we'll see when we talk about the next album that we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah. Let's talk about the songs on this album.
Okay.
So, even though I know you have some disdain for it, but
yeah.
I like almost every song on this album. It's really weird because I hadn't seen any of the videos for so long, but then now you can watch them all on YouTube, like Black Planet, No Time to Cry, and what's the other one? There's this one, it's gonna bug me now. I always think First and Lesson always has a video, but it doesn't. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I get you. No, there are some good songs on this album. I don't think it's a bad album by any means.
Yeah.
I could never keep my attention span because I would get distracted by the lyrics. I'd be like, what is he saying?
Yeah. Oh, I get it, yeah. I'm trying to name a few favorites, but they're pretty much all my favorite. But
they're all pretty. I think they're all pretty solid.
Yeah, I would say, like, probably the one that most people would hear first, obviously, is No Time to Cry. That seems to be, I don't know why it's the go-to one for a lot of people listening to this.
I think it's the most melodic of that bunch.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Because they're definitely, at least for this album, following in the gothic vein of like almost anti-melody. And that song at least has more strong melodic content to it.
And then First and Last and Always, I love that opening part to it.
Yeah.
The like, it's because it's I love 12 strings. Like, I love the sound of 12-string guitars. And
no, definitely.
And that's like, that is such a good sound for that.
I think 919 is actually a pretty good song.
Yeah, I love that song.
Yeah.
That's a great one. I was just gonna say that right after that. But yeah, there's pretty much everything else I like. In fact, one of the only things I don't like that much on this album is I don't really like Black Planet, and I think it's just the simplicity of it to some extent. It's not a bad song, but I think.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Okay, sure.
But honestly, I think that, at least for me, I just remember the first time I listened to it, Black Planet is initially what turned me off about them.
Really?
So perhaps if that song had never been put on the album, maybe I would have a different opinion of this album.
Oh, wow. I mean, I could see it. I don't know. It's just, for some reason, that song just never really appealed to me in a weird way. I don't know why, because, like I said, I like pretty much every single other song on this album.
No, they're all good. I mean, like I said, I like 919 a lot. I like Amphetamine Logic a lot.
Yeah.
You probably guessed that my favorite song on the album is the last one.
What's that? It's
Some Kind of Eldritch Mark Stranger.
Is that on the album?
Yeah.
Is that on the bonus one or is that on the regular one?
I'm pretty sure that's a regular one. It's not the reissue.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think my CD had that one. That's weird.
Bootleg.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I had a man. You know, one thing I do like about this album, in that what makes it unique, is actually the way in which the album's mixed and produced.
Yeah.
Not only because it has the drum sound that
Yeah.
like makes it kind of, a lot of people
Well,
copy
that,
that.
Essential. That became the gothic rock sound for drums. Is
Well,
like,
just drum machines.
Yeah.
I mean, that pretty much is like, oh, look how successful this album was. Because the album
Yeah.
was successful, especially in the UK.
yeah.
I mean, you could say, okay, well, a band with the drum machine can't be popular. It's like, yes, it can be.
No, definitely.
Like,
but it's hard. I feel like I do think you can record a great album with a drum machine, but the second you go on stage, people are like, "Where's your drummer?"
That's true. Yeah, there was a whole big argument on that
Yeah.
on some music site recently. I think it was like Spin or something, but they talked about all the like, oh, here's what happens if you have a drummer. It's like, do people really want to hear perfection, or they want to see somebody slamming on drums? And I think the conclusion they came to was people want to see somebody slamming on drums, even if
At
they're
the
doing
very
it badly.
least, I think people want to see someone operating the drum machine on stage. Like
Like Nine Inch Nails.
yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, to some extent.
They're pretty good drummer though. I mean,
No,
they use you.
he's a real. Josh Freese is amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. But it's like I got distracted there. Trent Reznor getting in my head. But yeah, I like the way that this album's mixed, because I feel like it's very unique, and it's almost in a kind of garage band, not necessarily garage band feel. It does not have the garage band feel to this
Yeah.
album, but it does have a personality to it.
No, definitely.
And the way that the guitars are mixed, like, because they're very chimey and very tinny when they're doing clean stuff, and when they're doing the electric distorted stuff,
yeah.
it's actually really weird because it sounds almost like it's coming out of like a practice amp.
Yeah.
Like, there's no big, heavy metal guitar rock coming out of this album.
No, definitely.
It's definitely its own little like slice of music.
Well, it almost kind of reminds me of, without being as bad as it, like Norwegian black metal,
Oh,
and the
God,
way
dude.
they record.
Yeah, okay.
but not
Not
being bad,
Norwegian,
obviously.
okay,
like,
yeah. Sorry for anybody who likes Norwegian black metal. That's not really my thing. If there's any. Although I don't know why you'd be listening to this podcast. Well,
Yeah.
I guess, you can like any kind of music you want, but
I mean, yeah. I mean,
I'm not going to go put on some Norwegian black metal when I'm driving
nor would
around.
I. But
yeah.
it just, it
I get it,
reminds me
though,
of the
yeah.
lo-fi recording
Yeah.
techniques and.
Yeah, so it does remind me of that. It is, I do kind of think that one of the problems with this album is that it's almost mixed in a pop record kind of sense.
Yeah.
In that the vocals are pushed so far forward into the mixes, and they almost, instead of like blending in with the music,
Yeah.
they kind of just sit on top of it.
No, I actually completely agree with you. That's something I was going to comment on. And, I mean, we talk a lot about, in the last episode, the way The Cure produce albums.
Yeah.
And something that I appreciate about the way The Cure produce their albums, at least the Gothic trilogy, is that the band and the vocals are very well blended together
Oh, yeah.
in a way that I think that lends itself to Gothic rock. And I do feel that this album lacks that production technique.
I think especially the fact that The Cure, of course we're going to compare it to The Cure.
Yeah.
Like, of course, right? Just mandatory Cure talk. But with 17 Seconds, basically that whole trilogy of albums, they are really good about letting the song decide how it's going to be mixed.
Exactly.
Where, like Secrets, you can barely hear him. He whispers because it's like the song, that's not what the song needed, was a big vocal on top of it,
Yeah.
And anytime that they had with Pornography, like Hanging Garden,
Mhm.
like the song has a very catchy part of it, but throughout the entire thing you can hear very strongly the vocals and the music at the
Yeah.
exact same time. And
Well, the drums and bass are like such a big part of that song.
yeah,
like,
and it
they
has
only-
like a rumble,
Yeah.
and the vocals just help it. Where
Yeah.
with this album, a lot of the time it'll be going like First and Last and Always, right? Great opening. All the instruments come in, it's chugging on for a while, and then it's just like really, really loudly, and it just comes in so loud
Yeah.
that it's distracting. And I think that it actually takes away from it to some extent. And even with the remastered version, like they have a remastered version of it.
2006.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still has that same issue. And it's not to say a bad thing, but I think it would have been better if the songs and the vocals had worked together instead of it being kind of pop oriented or mixed in that way.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Another thing is that, I mean, if we're talking history of the album, Eldritch is doing so many amphetamines that he's like almost impossible to work with on this album.
Yeah.
And so Marks and just really the entire rest of the band are just over him by the time they're done recording this album.
Yeah.
And as soon as the album's done, they all leave.
And then they go on to form The Mission. And people in America probably know that the band is known as The Mission UK.
Yeah.
And so I actually really like that band. We'll probably do actually a whole episode on them.
Mhm.
Probably do, if we actually end up doing it, we'll probably do multiple.
Probably.
Because there's a lot.
There's a
They
lot
have
to talk
of
about with
albums.
The Mission UK.
And then there's the other one, Ghost something. So that became its own thing.
Yeah.
And then the Sisters of Mercy kind of went into hiding. I mean, yeah. While this continues to be
Yeah.
an amazing thing, but we're going to head into our news segment first, and then we're going to talk about Floodland.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're on to our news segment for this episode. And so one thing I wanted to talk about, and I know it's kind of taboo, but I'm going to talk about Tim Burton for this podcast.
Our Lord and Savior.
Oh, God, no. Oh, God. You're on your own on that one. But so we know a lot of people have very strong feelings about
Oh, definitely.
Tim Burton's works and maybe the adoption in some particular stores or retail environments of
Yeah.
some of his products, maybe an oversaturation of some of his things. But you got to admit that his movies still do have their dark quality to some extent, some of them.
It's like Disneyland for goth people.
It's very true, and that's where probably most of his products are sold. But there really isn't a director who is so popular that actually does cater to any kind of creepy or quirkiness at all.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you have Wes Anderson, who's very quirky, but it's
not creepy. Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I want to talk about it, is because Tim Burton still tries to make creepy movies. Of course, Alice in Wonderland's a total bust, and
I feel like now he's just trying to go for more mystical things than anything else.
Well, he did Frankenweenie, which was pretty good.
Yeah, that was actually a really good
Black and white
movie.
stop motion. If nobody's seen that, that's actually really good. It's a pretty good homage to actually monster movies and stuff too. But another reason I want to talk about this, other than the fact that it's Tim Burton, is that he's making an adaptation of a book that I really love, and it's Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. And I loved this book when I read it. And it's not very difficult to read, but it's great.
I can't comment that much on it. I personally have not read the book series.
Yeah, so the second book's out now. I don't know when the third one's coming out. I'm assuming it's probably sometime soon or within the next year. I'm reading the second one. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm not liking it even close to as much as I like the first one, because the first one had a really big air of mystery to it.
Yeah.
And you kind of just slowly discover everything. And this book tries to do that, but it goes into a little bit more of the fantastical kind of like fantasy stuff instead of kind of the more
maybe that's
witchy.
why Tim Burton's picked it up.
He's doing the first book and not the second one. So the second one's more like fantasy and has some of like.
I am really interested to see what he does with this movie.
I really am, and that's because I've seen the cast for it.
Yeah.
And
who is in the cast?
I don't know kid actors that much, but I forget who's gonna play Miss Peregrine. I'll look that up while I'm talking here. The one thing that I did notice about it, and that I was kind of apprehensive about, is that the kid actors were not how I pictured the characters at all, and it's kind of ridiculous because they actually do picture the characters in the book. Like they show them the characters show you what they look like.
Oh, really?
And so,
well, like, do you mean literally?
Yeah, they have like little photos of them.
Okay.
And some of the kids, I didn't feel really fit that kind of image to it, but I can understand why
they're probably trying to keep a PG rating and
something like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Well, they're not really grotesque. Well, actually, one of the characters is really grotesque. One of the characters is a kid who can bring stuff to life, like inanimate clay and all this stuff to life, and he uses like rodent hearts, and so he has like all these things that are like hearts that he carries around with him that are really gross, and it's freaking so cool. But I don't see how they can do it, because unfortunately, for better or worse, Tim Burton tries to keep that PG rating, and at most PG-13.
Yeah, he hasn't ventured away from that in a long time.
Yeah, and so.
But maybe this will be something new for him. Maybe, who knows? We might be surprised by it.
Yeah. It's Eva Green as Miss Peregrine. I don't know exactly what she's
known
but
for.
that's what she looks like.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's okay.
Is that anything close to how they describe her in the
No,
part?
I thought she was gonna be like way older.
That's
So,
what I was picturing
yeah.
when you talked about it.
Right? And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm apprehensive at best, but I really do hope with how good the story is that they can do something good with it. But then, if you saw Dark Shadows, which obviously is a very beloved show and is a very good show,
Yeah.
he kind of didn't really do it justice with that one. I mean, it's good in its own way, but it's definitely one of those things where if you have watched the show, it's very hard to watch.
It was for me. It was one of those things when they announced it. I was really excited, and then I watched the trailer for it, and I immediately knew that it was just
gonna be another. Yeah. That's my news for today. We'll probably. I have an episode planned where we're actually gonna do a whole thing on the oversaturation of Tim Burton.
Yeah.
If we ever can kind of.
I mean, if anything, this movie might be better just because Johnny Depp's not involved.
Yeah, so far. Bottom Carter's not going to be in it anymore because they're not together anymore. And I think they're just filming it this year. So just a few months ago, they probably wrapped filming. So there's no way she was in it. Look out for that movie. I'm looking forward to it. I really recommend buying the books. At least the first one, like at minimum the first one, because it's so good.
Well, I feel like there's so many of these movies coming out right now. And just to briefly branch outside the goth world, but like, all these books like Catching Fire and
Hunger Games, right?
Yeah, Hunger Games and all these series books that are being adapted to film right now. I really think that it does you a lot of benefit to read them before you go into watching them.
Yeah, I agree. And just look out for it. I'm definitely going to be talking about it when it comes out.
Definitely.
I could definitely tell you that. That's our new segment.
And that pretty much wraps up news for today.
Yeah. All right. So back to the Sisters of Mercy. Okay. We're on to Floodland.
Yep.
Another very beloved album by many, which hopefully we will not tarnish or hurt anybody's feelings when talking about it.
Well, and then I think there'll be a balance here because this again is another album that Donnie and I disagree on.
It is. It is. I've never been a huge fan of Floodland, and I really don't think it's a bad album. I really don't. Like, for what it is, it's great. You know? Like, they took the Sisters of Mercy formula, gave a little bit more of a punch to it, made it a little bit more direct, and a little bit more big in terms of sound. And unfortunately, that's not what I wanted. I wanted First and Last and Always Part 2. Yeah. And I never got that from Sisters of Mercy.
No, I get that. It's a very different album for First and Last Noise. For me, I think the appeal is I should mention, by the way, that of the three of these albums, I love this album. This album for me, though, I think the appeal is initially before getting into gothic music, I was a big fan of new wave. And so this album to me like reminded me of all these new wave bands that I used to love and would listen to, but it was just a little darker. And so it was a nice almost gateway into gothic music.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see this album being a really big crossover.
Yeah.
Just because it can appeal to so many different audiences. And yeah, like First and Last Always, this album was a success. It was commercially successful. Not really in America again. Yeah. But definitely in UK. So I could see being into a whole bunch of different genres and liking this album.
And then another thing is that I feel that we talked about this with the last album. I feel like the lyrical content on this album has stepped up a little bit. Yeah. It's not quite as simplistic, not quite as cliche. Yeah. It's still Sisters of Mercy, but I feel like it's a slightly matured version.
It is. I would say that's pretty true. They have a different, because all the people were pretty much gone from the first album.
Yeah, like we mentioned, literally the entire band left after the recording of the first album.
And then he had to basically reform what a lot of people call Sister Mercy Mark II.
Yeah, which pretty much consisted of Eldritch, his drum machine, and he actually recruited Patricia Morrison to play bass.
Yeah, she played in a whole bunch of different bands. I can't remember what any of them are.
I think she actually played in Susie and the Banshees at one point.
Did she? I don't think so.
Let's not quote me on that, but I think I read that.
Okay, I know that she after Sisters of Mercy, she played in The Damned until like 2000 something.
Yeah.
But she is a definitely a puzzle piece of this.
Yeah.
I'll talk more about that like after we kind of talk about the sound, like after we get over the sound of the album, because she's definitely a key element in the Sisters of Mercy's success, at least, and definitely what a lot of people attribute them to today.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about how you feel about Floodland and just the change in sound?
Okay, well, for me, I feel like Floodland is a better put together album, at least for Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah.
I understand it's a little bit of a departure from being as goth per se as the last album.
Yeah.
But for me, it represents more mature songwriting, better lyrical content. The production value to me is better.
Production value is incredibly high on this album.
The songs are mixed better, and I really do think that Morrison played such a big part in making this album sound good.
You think so? I think a lot of people would, especially Andrew Eldritch, would disagree with you.
I know Andrew Eldritch would. I don't know if you want to talk about that yet.
I'm going to talk about. All right, we'll just get into it. So one of the things, if you start researching Sisters of Mercy, you'll notice that this band is coded in legal issues, just everything. And so basically from the beginning, so ever since Andrew Eldritch basically became the sole member of the band, he's basically been in arguments with
every
record
member
companies
of the band or record companies, producers.
Yeah, so when Patricia was in the band, she was hired, and it stated that she was largely hired because of the way she looked, so they could have basically like the goth pinup girl, and when you see the videos and stuff, it's very apparent. Dominion, right in the beginning, it's all focusing on her and how beautiful and gothic she looks, and
I think that also helps set the stage for today. I mean, such a big part of gothic culture is women,
and so even if she only sang, say, backup vocals or anything like that, it's basically on a lot of the videos she just is kind of singing the backup on it, but they focus on her pretty heavily, and people remember that image of her coming out of the shadows and being mysterious and smooth and sly and everything like that. And I know a lot of people who that's the videos that they associate with Sisters of Mercy, and it definitely worked.
Certainly for me, those are definitely the ones that I associate with Sisters of Mercy.
Right, and so it definitely worked in their favor to have those kind of videos and have that kind of marketing. But I know that they have denied her involvement in the band. Basically, almost everything that she ever did, they discredited.
No, she is not credited anywhere on the album, and that's a big part of the reason why that she leaves after they finish recording this album.
And that's crazy to me. Didn't they? I think, I'm not sure. Don't necessarily quote me on it, because you gotta understand, Sisters of Mercy, there's a lot of information with Sisters of Mercy to keep track of. But I'm pretty sure that one of their albums they didn't even tour on. I think it might have been Floodland, where the only thing they ever did was like a Top of the Pops performance or something like that.
I don't know, but I don't know about that one.
Maybe it's Vision thing. I can't remember. One of them they barely did any press for it at all.
I feel like it would be more likely to be Vision thing.
Probably, yeah.
I have a hard time believing they didn't tour
for Floodland.
Yeah,
that's probably true.
Especially with Morrison in the band.
Yeah, I think he even commented I know that Andrew Eldritch has taken some pretty vicious stabs at her in the media.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when she basically confronted him about not being credited on the album, he responded by saying, well, I didn't really feel like it was important to credit you on the album because I wrote all the music.
Yeah, and then he even said in a later interview that she didn't really play on the album, so when we played live, you can totally see it. Like, she could barely play the guitar. And so she was in The Damned for like 10 or 15 years, something like that. And she was in a lot of bands before that. It's not like she was a model who they hired to be in a band.
No, definitely not.
It's kind of it's really hard to ignore those sort of things when you become a fan of somebody's music,
Yeah.
And I understand a lot of bands fight, right? Bauhaus fight a lot. You know, they say that it's hard to even be in a room with Peter Murphy.
Yeah.
The Cure, I mean, they don't necessarily fight, but they definitely had a ton of members,
Yeah.
And
I think the issue with the Cure is that when Robert Smith doesn't like someone, he just gets rid of them.
He doesn't say it. He says that, of course, there are some people who he just doesn't get along with.
Yeah.
especially with a band with that many members. But he says, like it just happens, like like
of course he does.
Yeah, right. But he says that sometimes members just go, because Simon Gallup's been in there the entire time. Well, not the entire time, but
yeah,
they fought before and
yeah,
made up. But this is one of those things where it's definitely like it's cringeworthy because there was so much in the press about it where they're actually talking about each other. Where with Bauhaus they're just kind of like, oh, like it's hard to deal with being in a band sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's like with Bauhaus, they're fighting, and it kind of gets out that they're fighting. Whereas I feel like with Sisters of Mercy, it's just like all over the media that they are the band that fights with each. Like,
yeah,
that Andrew Eldritch is just known for being an asshole, basically.
Yeah. Sorry, Andrew Eldritch, if you're out there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you probably don't care, but
yeah. I don't think he's gonna be listening.
That's probably true. But great album.
Oh, definitely. There's. I
just thought.
I know that you don't care for it as much, but there's so many tracks on this album that I like. I actually love the opening track, Dominion.
That's a great
it's
opening
so
track.
Good.
Like that. There could not be a more perfect opening track for this album. Like, it's so good.
1959's good song.
I love that song. Like, it's so good. That came out. That was when I first heard this album. Because I listened to them in order.
Yeah.
So I have listened to Vision Thing the least amount.
Yeah.
For my own reasons. But when I heard Floodland, right after I heard First Last and Always, I've been listening to First Last and Always for a while before I heard Floodland, and to hear 1959 on there. That blew me away because there was like no real ballady type songs.
Yeah.
And especially since it was so much more of like a rock oriented album, I was like, wow, I did not expect this. And he nails it on that song.
Exactly. Well, and this is another reason why I like this album a lot is that, first of all, this is the first time we're seeing Andrew Eldritch write music.
Mm-hmm.
And he's demonstrating that he's at least capable of it. And not just that he's capable of it, that he's capable of writing some good songs.
Well, I think some of the earlier singles and stuff, we'll get to that when we do like...
Some of the singles, yes. Everything on First and Last and Always, he has no writing credit for it. It's purely lyrical credit.
That's crazy to me. Wow, jeez. It's so different. I think that's one of the main reasons why it's so different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a completely different album.
Yeah.
And... not just in like literally the only thing that's the same really is his voice.
Pretty much.
That's it. The drums are different. The guitar sound is different.
Well, we should probably address the drum machine changes for this album.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Want a bigger sound than the first one?
Yeah.
You got it. Like this it's a huge sounding album, and it's definitely that kind of, was this 88 or 87 or something? I think it's 87.
Yes. This one came out in 1987.
So it has. We said that First Last always sounds like an 80s album because of the drum machine, because you can tell that drum machine hadn't come very far. This one sounds like an 80s album because the way that it sounds like a big rock album.
Yeah.
In that the drums are huge. The room for the drums is like big and echoey, and the guitars are shimmery, and all the distortion stuff is big and loud.
But there's also so much. I feel like there's a balance though, also with like the synth and everything, and that's why like it. I feel like it. To me, I feel like it's a very good first listen for Sisters of Mercy if you've never listened to them before, because you can almost come to it from being a fan of any genre of music and appreciate some of what's on the album.
I could see that, actually. I can totally agree with that, because First and Last and Always is for a very particular type of person.
Yeah, definitely.
It's for someone expecting that kind of like more personal kind of darker sensibility to it, kind of a little spooky, a little Transylvanian in a way. But then Floodland is definitely much more accessible. And I actually find that a lot more people, at least the ones that I meet, and especially if you go to like any kind of, goth club and night or anything, that they tend to prefer a lot of songs of Floodland.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you seen Dominion played on goth nights? I mean, it's just it's always the
remixes of it. And
and so I guess I'm kind of on a different side of an opinion on here.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because these are both good albums. I said they're very different.
Yes.
But they're good in their own ways.
And I think that us just talking about this is just a perfect example of how they appeal to different audiences.
Yeah, exactly. Even people who like the same kind of music.
Yeah.
And also, I want to mention this Corrosion always plays too.
Yeah.
Like always, like so.
That was the next song I was going
Oh
to mention.
yeah, really?
Honestly.
Yeah. So that one always plays like at all dance nights. So
It's a good song. Like,
yeah, it's a great song.
Yeah.
This one, I really feel. Not that I didn't feel on the first album that they had nailed the image, because they really had. I mean, they are, like, honestly, right from the get-go, they had the image thing down.
Yeah.
You know, they were inside of long black trench clothes, and they had the hats and everything, and the aviator shades, which I don't even know what the heck Andrew Eldritch's eyes look like. I have no idea.
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, so I've never seen them, and in none of the videos does he show him his eyes at all, and they really just had that look. It's kind of mysterious, kind of flowing kind of look on stage. And all the videos from, Black Planet, okay, if you've ever seen the video for Black Planet, it's a weird video. All it is them driving around in the monkey mobile.
Yep.
Like the monkey's car. And it's really weird because it's all bright and sunny, but they're just kind of moping around in the car or whatever, and the song plays. And then No Time to Cry is a great video. It's just kind of them playing and stuff. But they just nailed it. And so when they went to Floodland, they took that and kind of made it a little cleaner, a little slicker, and way higher budget.
Yeah.
And so you get this really distinctive look and kind of feeling from their videos. And they were smart to do it. And, of course, Patricia was a big part of that, being featured in everything. And so this Corrosion has, like, a really cool, like, dystopian video.
Yeah.
And Dominion has this weird, like, Egyptian mummy kind of video. And he's wearing all white and stuff. And it's cool that they kind of nailed that too on here.
Yeah. And we talked about before, goth is so intimately associated with style and image. And I think at this point, the Sisters of Mercy have figured out what theirs is.
Yeah. Even if it's not goth, right?
Yeah.
Although he wouldn't start denying that so hard until a little bit later. But, But yeah, I think that really helped this. Even the album cover. Album cover is pretty freaking cool. Like, it just kind of...
No, it's way cooler than... I love First and Last and Always, but the album cover is kind of boring.
I kind of have to admit that. Like, I would say, especially when I had the CD, like I said, I don't know if this is a bootleg CD or not, but the one that I had, it was just like, is that logo, and then I had like a little printed booklet, and it was like all black, and then the back was just black and had red font.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I get it. It's dark. It's spooky, but I kind of want something to look at. And Floodland definitely has like a lot cooler, more distinctive.
Well, like Floodland, like the album cover is just what I associate with Sisters of Mercy. Like that, that him with his shades and like that little moon in the background and like. Yeah,
exactly. So good album.
That pretty much wraps up, I think, what we have to say about Floodland.
Sorry so much of it was wrapped in controversy.
Yeah.
It's a good album. On final note, I'll say it's a good album. I wish that there was kind of more of a band dynamic on it.
I could see your point in that.
But it's a step in... It's not a step, to left field. It's a step to the right.
Yeah.
It's in the same vein, just going a little different route with it.
Yeah. So...
we're getting
right into it.
Yep.
All right, we're going to talk about Vision Thing.
Yep, Sisters of Mercy's
third release.
Yep, is their third official album. It was released in 1990.
Yep, a little bit of a gap there.
Yeah, 3 years.
Yeah. Again, replaced everyone who they were working with.
Yep, Patricia Morrison is gone.
Yep.
And she was actually fired right before they were starting to record. Or she quit, or there's some discrepancy between that.
I kind of feel like she quit. But
yeah. And so, this album... I know that we said Floodland had, was good because it was a step aside, wasn't a step in a whole different direction. Unfortunately, this album I think takes a little too far for my liking.
It's a very different album. Like if you were to play me Vision Thing and I had never heard Sisters Mercy, or let's say I had heard Sisters of Mercy before, but I hadn't heard Vision Thing, I would not recognize it as them at all.
I would not either. And I think that there's a huge departure on this album from the sound that they were rooted in.
Yeah.
And so there's some stuff on here that sounds kind of like Floodland.
Yeah.
And that stuff I like.
Yeah.
But the stuff that is kind of
very
original or, to them or very metal influence.
Yeah,
there's a huge metal influence.
It feels
on
very late 80s metal, like.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I think it's funny because we talked about Black Planet with First and Last and Always is maybe not the best opener.
Yeah.
If you, especially for the album, since there's so many stronger tracks that actually could open the album.
Yep.
Like say the song First and Last and Always. And then we talked about Dominion being a great opener for Floodland. And then on this one,
Vision Thing
is not a good opener.
It's definitely not.
Because not only does it have very generic sounding drums and very generic sounding guitar, and unfortunately it has what I think are some of the worst lyrics that he's produced.
Yeah, I mean, it's Andrew Eldritch, so.
Man, you really despise the way he writes, huh?
I liked Floodland, but that was about it, to be honest with you.
Well, this, it's called 25 Whores and a Floor Next... What is it? Oh, God. 25 Whores in the Room Next Door and then 25 Floors and I Need More.
Yeah.
That's the first line on the album. How do you begin an album with that?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have the grace that, Dominion had. Like, it was a big epic and it kind of announced itself and it's just slowly built itself up.
Mm-hmm.
This one just comes out swinging right in the beginning. And
almost from a genre that we're like, what? Did we change something? Like,
yeah. I just don't understand how that was like the song for this album, because Vision Thing is the one that seems like they're pushing a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously it's the name of the album. It's the name of the first song.
Yeah.
And even when he went to promote it, there was interviews where he was talking about, this is about George W. Bush and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't understand with an album that actually has some pretty good songs. They're not great, but they're, like More is probably my favorite song on the album.
Yeah.
Or like I Was There.
Yeah.
Like those are... Is that what's called? I Was There? Is that the name of that? It was like I
Was Wrong.
I was wrong. That's I was trying to.
I Was Wrong is a really good song.
Yeah, I was wrong about I Was There. But yeah, I think
Ribbons I like a lot too.
I like Ribbons. Yeah, that's a good song. But I think that when you have such strong tracks like that, opening the album with something like Vision Thing is a very bad idea, and basically basing it around that. But then this album is such a mixed bag.
Oh yeah. And I think that's the major issue with this album, is that it's so inconsistent. Like, there are songs that sound like Sisters of Mercy songs, and then all of a sudden we sound like we're Alice in Chains for a second, and then it's just all over the place. And I think a big part of that, if we look at the history of the album, is they didn't know what they were doing. They spent 9 months in the studio, and at sometime around 6 months, I think it was, like, their producers came in to check in on them, and they had 5 songs written.
Yeah, that is like hilarious. Since they're like, oh, it's gonna be a 5-song album.
Producers like, no, it's not.
And then 2 days later, they had
7.5 songs.
7.5 songs. So you can kind of see where there's some issues with this. I just don't think a lot of this material maybe had time to sit.
Oh, definitely not. I think they didn't know what they wanted to write, and so they were taking forever, and then they felt pressure to produce an album, so they just started cranking out songs that maybe weren't even songs they wanted to release.
Or necessarily, I mean, we already know that he was kind of hated the goth label or anything kind of dark.
Maybe he's trying to deliberately get away from it.
And I feel like that's what this album is. It's a very strong attempt to kind of get to a more crisp, clean place where you're not going to be labeled as, what you're detesting. I mean, if he's hating goth music or he started not to like it, because this is right around the time when Vision Thing came out.
Yeah.
Right around the time is when he started to really deny his link to goth music. He's like, oh, this is dumb, like...
Yeah, and he's always claimed his love for classic rock, and...
It just is a bummer. Like, this album... There's some songs that are flat out, I just think are bad. Like Dr. Jeep
is so bad.
First of all, the title of the song called Dr. Jeep. And I'm very sorry if anyone out there likes this album or is like, this is their favorite Sisters of Mercy album.
I drive a Jeep.
You drive a Jeep, exactly. So But I'm sorry if anybody out there actually, really likes this album or this is their favorite Sisters of Mercy album. I just felt that a lot of the things that worked on the previous albums, they were done here. Like, say... like I Was Wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's basically a more guitar-oriented 1959.
Yeah.
And you have More, which is basically a slightly worse Dominion.
Yeah.
And
you have Ribbons, which is a little more reminiscent of Floodland.
Yeah. You basically have these... it's just frustrating. There's some good stuff, but then there's just some stuff which I just don't want to listen to. And that sucks because... as much as I wasn't a big fan of Floodland as opposed to First Last Noise.
Yeah.
I can say every single track on First Last Noise I love.
Yeah.
I can listen to that whole album all the way through. And even Black Planet, it's not my favorite song.
Yeah.
But I like it now.
Yeah.
It grew on me. And I can listen to Floodland. I can listen to it all the way through, right?
Yeah.
Even though, I may not like the change in the sound as much, but I still think the song is a strong album.
Yeah.
They had a definite idea of what they want to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
This album, I'm just skipping around. Because
I completely agree.
it's just some songs are hit and miss, and they just didn't know what they were doing.
I mean, I've listened to it all the way through plenty of times, but like, there's so many times that when I'm listening to it, I just want to like hit skip and then skip again.
Yep, exactly. And you should never want to do that with an album, especially with a band that can make or had the ability to at one time make something that can really connect with an audience and feels very personal.
Yeah.
This does not feel personal at all.
Definitely.
And that's really disappointing. It felt like it was just kind of just misplaced.
I agree.
Yeah. And I hate to say that because it ends on such a sour note.
Because the band, due to legal disputes that they always seem to be in, after this album, stopped releasing new material.
Yeah. And so this was basically the last one. Vision Thing is the last official album released by them, aside from compilation albums. And so we'll briefly talk about those, but basically what happened before we talk about the compilation albums, I'll talk about the continued history of what happened. So Sisters of Mercy tour from time to time, and they usually don't have the same lineup in it. They usually will change a whole bunch, but Andrew Eldritch, of course, is always the lead singer.
Occasionally they'll debut a new song, but they never release it.
They don't. Yeah, they have a whole bunch of new songs that they'll play live, but they don't ever release them anymore. Their website, pretty sure is still the same one that was when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
Because I remember going to the website and it was still that like white website with the orange text or whatever.
Yep.
And, there just doesn't seem to be any kind of want to work on new music or any kind of... I mean, he says that there's no real need to. He says we were more successful not releasing albums than we ever were releasing them or something like that.
Yeah.
So...
And maybe that's true.
Maybe. So, I would like to hear new music from them. I can honestly say that.
I would.
I would really like to hear what they can do in today's world because...
I would like to see them redeem themselves because I feel like Vision Thing, like...
It's not a good note to go out on.
Yeah, they had two like solid albums, and then to go out on Vision Thing, it's a little disappointing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I would like to see... just something. What else they have?
Yeah.
And especially because they already have songs,
Yeah.
And you have bands like Christian Death
Yeah.
who go the way of pledge music or anything like that. And they're successful. They can get these albums made and it's, not a super huge burden. Of course it's always a lot of work to make any kind of album. But they get some assistance, which Sister Mercy could totally do.
Definitely.
I think that they could. If they pitched it the right way, if they didn't pitch it as, like Vision Thing Part 2.
Yeah.
If they pitch it as
Maybe for God's sakes, we live in an era where they could make a Kickstarter and have their new album completely funded independently.
Yeah. So if the money is the issue, with today's technology, you can make an album.
Yeah.
So I would like to hear something eventually. Do I think it's going to happen?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So that's where it ends right now.
That's Vision Thing.
That's Sister Mercy. I mean, they still tour. If you want, you can see them. They tour the UK sometimes. I think it's been a while since they've been on tour, if I remember correctly. It's hard because they don't really update their website that much. So let's talk about some compilation albums.
All right.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about briefly here was the compilation albums. And so the first one is going to be Some Girls Wandered by Mistake.
Yeah.
Now, this came out after Vision Thing, and it basically compiles all the B-sides and everything that they had even the EPs basically that they had originally released, and has one of their most popular songs, Alice, on here.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of my favorite songs by them is called Damage Done, and the thing I don't like about this song, I'll just say right after that, because I think the song's great.
Yeah.
I think it's a great song, and it has a real kind of like charm to it, the way that it's recorded and everything. But I would want one that's mixed a little better.
Yeah.
Just because the guitar is like a little overbearing.
Well, I mean, it is a compilation album.
Yeah, I know. That's really my only issue with it. But like Temple of Love on this is great. It's like one of the best songs ever made, and especially they had Temple of Love on the greatest hits. I think it's this different version of it. Although I've never heard any other version of it. As far as I know, I think they sound really similar. But Temple of Love's great song, and so I think it's a okay compilation. Yeah, you can tell why some of the stuff isn't really reworked for other stuff.
Yeah,
but it's okay. So. That's pretty much it.
It's the most you can really say about it.
And then for the compilation album, A Slight Case of Overbombing, pretty much the only thing that I really have to mention here is that the Temple of Love version on here is freaking awesome, like I just said a second ago. And then, as far as I know, there's only like one original song on here.
Yeah.
And so it's Under the Gun.
Yep.
And the video for it's pretty cheesy. And the song is okay.
Oh, I mean, there's an extended mix of Reflection. And
yeah,
I mean, Lucretia, My Reflection.
But, yeah.
Yeah, there's just not a lot to say about the album. Really.
It really isn't. But I just thought it would be good to mention because they have their own unique songs on them, and of course, there's not really that much to talk about. But that was, I think that was the last song that they really promoted for them was Under the Gun. So I thought it was important to mention. That was the CD I saw everywhere. Like every time I find like a Sister Mercy CD, I always find A Slight Case of Overbombing.
Really?
I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it's like I guess a whole bunch of stuff wasn't even released in America.
Yeah.
Or like I don't even know if Some Girls Wander by Mistake was released in America, but I had a copy of it.
Bootleg.
Yeah, that's how I'm starting to think that all my Sister Mercy stuff was bootlegs. So that's the Sister Mercy and our opinion of it. Obviously, this one was much more bitter. Sweet than The Cure was.
Yeah.
That's just because, it's just kind of a bittersweet band. You know.
Definitely.
There's some great music in there. It's extremely original.
It definitely gets your hopes up.
Yeah, but then you just have this kind of crummy situation.
It's kind of like a bad boyfriend.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really want him to like be there.
Mm-hmm.
He's just not.
Yeah. He's not the first and last and always. He's the vision thing. So that's it. If there's any Sisters of Mercy news, we'll probably throw it up or tell you guys about it. But
there probably
won't be. No, probably won't be. So we'll see. He might hear this, might prove us wrong.
Yeah.
He might have some.
I hope he does.
Yeah, might have some idea about everything that happened that's different than what's out there, because you know how the internet is.
At the very least, it'd be interesting to have a book written by him come out.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
with all those rock books coming out, that'd be amazing. Or just anybody really who is
Patricia Morrison.
I know, I was just gonna say,
would be a great book.
Just gonna say that. So if any of that happens, we'll let you know. But
so Patricia Morrison, if you're listening,
Patricia Morrison, write us a book about your time. I even want to hear about The Damned.
I just like Patricia Morrison, to be honest with you.
Yeah, she's cool. Good bassist.
Yeah.
So, all right. This has been GothCast, episode 2, Sisters of Mercy. I am Dr. Sanders.
And I'm Robbie Gore.
We're out of here.
See ya.